Hello there, viewers. That was obnoxious. Good day to you guys. Welcome back to the channel. Glad you guys are here. This fine specimen of a service van is a 2002 Ford E350/E250. It's got the 5.4 modular V8. I think it's a 5.4. And customer states we have a check engine light and it has illuminated. So let's go ahead and see what our light's about right quick. Right now I've got the scan tool out here with me. Silence, loud metal working body shop guys. Yeah, they're getting after it today. Anyway, this particular van here has got 155,295 miles on the odometer. Let's go ahead and key this unit on. Okay, so it doesn't actually have a check engine light. It has a service engine soon warning message. That's the same thing. The ECM is saying, hey, I've got a problem. It requests that the malfunction illuminator indicator be turned on. So that's the same as the check engine light. Some of them are a symbol, some of them are spelled out for you in words. So anyway, she seems to be running pretty well. It's not shaking or misfiring. Let's give it some throttle. Yeah, it runs okay. So what I want to do, we're going to go ahead and pull up the scan tool data. We're going to check the codes on this unit. We're going into Ford. Okay, here we go. We're in. Got a 2002 Ford Econoline 5.4 V8 single overhead cam. Let's get into our engine control module. Engine and powertrain. We want to see with AC. Of course it has AC. It's an AC service van. Codes menu. Memory codes, that's what's stored, that's what has requested the illuminator indicator turned on. And we've got two codes here, a P1132 and a P1152, both of which are stating heated oxygen sensors. We got bank 1 sensor 1 indicating rich and bank 2 sensor 1 indicating rich. So both sides of the V configured engine, both sides are saying I'm running rich, and it's pulling away fuel to try to create a stoichiometric air-fuel ratio. So let's confirm that that's actually legitimate. A lot of times when people see O2 sensor codes, they run out, they buy a generic cheapo white box O2 sensor, they throw the sensor in, and then bam, what do you know, the code shows right back up. So I don't think we had two sensors that failed at the exact same time. That's highly unlikely. We're going to go into fuel right here. I want to check on the fuel trims. Let's see if we're actually running rich or if we're actually running lean. Okay. Let's stroll us on down. Stroll. We can't stroll with the scan tool. Scrolling down. Fuel trims, long term fuel trim, bank 1 and 2. Those are hanging out at 0, so there's no long-term activity. Let's find our short-term fuel trims real quick. Here we go, short-term, bank 1 and bank 2. Yeah, they're a little negative. -7, -9. Usually our threshold is right around 10. Yeah, that's right on the line there. So I'll tell you what, let's go up and see what our O2 sensors are doing. This is our preliminary evaluation. Bank 1, sensor 1, there we go. Let's graph these up. O2s are right here. Bring it up into a foregraph. Uh-oh, I lost it. Lost it when I tried to graph it. Maybe I went the wrong way. Scrolling down. Mass airflow. There we go. O2 sensors. That was odd. That one's just chilling flatline for a second. Anyway, O2 sensor, we got bank 1 sensor 1, that's upstream of the catalytic converter, and bank 2 sensor 1 also upstream of the catalytic converter. Now we can see both of these O2s are switching. They're running high-low, 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 and they're supposed to do that. When the value is running, when the engine's in a rich condition, then our voltage is going to increase, and when our engine is in a lean condition, our voltage is going to decrease. Now the ECM is constantly trying to take away fuel. It wants to have the best fuel economy it can. So as we're running, idling, driving, doing whatever we're doing, it's constantly pulling back a little bit of fuel. When the O2 sensor sees that fuel gets pulled back, it lets the ECM know that we're now starting to get into a lean condition, and at that point the ECM can start feeding it a little bit of extra fuel, and that's what the fuel trims are for. That's why we have short-term and long-term fuel trims. For example, your short-term fuel trims, those are just switching back and forth during normal driving. But if a trend arises where we're constantly rich or constantly lean, then our long-term fuel trims are going to start to adjust overall fuel quantities. So we have small fuel measurements that are being taken and adjusted with short-term fuel trims, and then we have larger fuel measurements that are taken and corrected with long-term fuel trims. Now, again, I don't believe that it's got faulty O2 sensors. Actually, this bank one right here, I don't really care for its switching pattern. That's a little weird right there. I'd like to see full switches, not these partial switches, especially if this graph and this graph are not really correlating with each other. You see right here how we had like this halfway type of switch, but down here in this other sensor, it's just operating as it should be. So I don't really particularly care for that. But again, I'm reluctant to just call faulty O2 sensors. There's been numerous times when the O2s were not the issue, and like I said, people toss sensors in there and think that that fixes the problem, and it doesn't. Yeah, look at that one right there. Yeah, this upstream on bank one is, I'm really not appreciating that very much. So here's what I want to do. We're going to utilize some process of elimination here. We're going to check out everything that can cause an erratic fuel trim. We're going to look for vacuum leaks. We're going to look for fuel leaks, which I doubt we're going to have. Most likely it's going to be a vacuum type of situation, or there's potential that the engine is actually sucking in some fuel from another source that the ECM does not know about, so it's actually potentially running rich. Now the issue here is this is a van, and when we pop the hood on said van, we're not going to get a lot of engine compartment access, so we may have to remove the doghouse unit over here. Some of these pop right out, some of them we've got to take the seat out to get the doghouse out. Regardless of which method I'm gonna have to use, if this doghouse comes out, I got to clean up all this rigmarole right here. So we're about to make a mess in the dash. Let's go ahead and popping the hood, and let's just take a preliminary check of what's going on under the bonnet real quick, and then we'll move back into the interior and pull the doghouse out. One thing I'm going to do real quick while I've got the sensor data pulled up is we're going to see how the ECM responds to irregularities in the air-fuel ratio mixture. And by what I mean by that is I'm going to create a vacuum leak, and we're going to watch the ECM respond to my artificial vacuum leak. Okay, so pay no mind to this graph right here and that graph right there. We're not worried about that. So right here, that is our brake booster. That's a vacuum assisted brake booster. The engine supplies manifold vacuum through this hose, through that check valve, and it creates a vacuum on one side of the diaphragm. That way when you push the pedal, you've got some assistance to help you get pedal pressure in the master cylinder. What I'm going to do is we're going to pull this off, and we're going to create a vacuum leak. When we do that, we're going to see what the O2 sensors do and how they respond. Pop that out. It's running rough. Compressor, don't need that. See how we're flatlining? Because there's a whole lot of air coming in. Hang on. Caught ruining the whole video here. Okay, so with this vacuum leak, we're running very lean. So what's happening is the O2 sensors are seeing, hey, there's way too much oxygen. There's way too much oxygen coming through. I don't like that, we're lean. So what it started doing was handing over a bunch of fuel to try to reach that stoichiometric air-fuel ratio, which is 14.7 parts air to fuel, in case you're wondering. 14.7 parts to 1 air to fuel. So there's our long terms. Let me go ahead and do this exact same test again. We're going to watch our short terms. So we can see short term bank 1 and short term 2. Those are returning back to their negative. There we go, 13 and 11, 13, 9. We're a little past threshold here. So watch what happens when I reintroduce that vacuum leak. Watch them, they're gonna go positive. Positive, here we go. Yep. So, plug it back up. What this is telling me is I don't think that it has a small vacuum leak, because if it did, we would have fuel trims in the positive. So we either have a sensor issue or multiple sensor issues, or there's fuel coming in that the engine does not know about and it's trying to take away some of that fuel. So the only other source for fuel to come into that engine when it's not supposed to be there, other than the fuel injectors, we could have a leaky injector, but other than the only other opportunity for fuel to enter is through the EVAP system that goes back to the fuel tank. There's a valve that will suction in vapor lines from the tank, and it'll reburn those vapors through the intake manifold through the engine. If that valve is stuck on, or if it's leaking and it's pulling excessive vacuum from the tank, there's a chance it could be pulling in some fuel from the tank, and then that's causing it to run rich, which is why our fuel trims are trying to take away fuel. So let's go ahead. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to hook up the smoke machine probably to this vacuum line right here, and we're going to start pumping smoke into the intake. That's going to help us find any potential leaks that could be there. There might be leaks, there might not, but we want to check for that. And while the smoke machine is doing its deal, I'm going to go clean out the doghouse, what we call it, inside, get all that stuff out of there. We're going to remove the doghouse. That's going to give us access to the top of the engine from the backside. So let's get after it. There's a lot to do. Okay, so we're not going to focus too much on smoke testing this. Like I said earlier, I don't believe it has a vacuum leak, because I have previously smoke tested this, because it has had vacuum leaks in the past for the doors for the HVAC system. It's got vacuum operated flaps inside. So what I'm going to do, we're going to pull this guy back off, and we're just going to start pumping this intake full of smoke. All right, we need some shop air. Plug that in, hit the button, the machine's powered up. It's full of some baby oil type stuff, and effectively this is just a very large vaporizer. So this thing's going to heat up inside, it's going to vaporize that baby oil, and it's going to send it out of its discharge hose as a thick, rich white smoke that we can see. So what I shall do, we need to take this check valve off. And there was some hose clamp pliers. Check valve comes off. Give it a twist. Plug that unit right in right there, and then so we don't lose it, take the check valve and put that back on the brake booster where it lives. Okay, so this thing right here, this is going to pump the whole intake stream full of that smoke. That's going to let me visually identify any leaks. In the meantime, I'm going inside. I'll see you guys once I have the doghouse pulled apart. Okay, we're in. I got all the goodies unpacked and out of the interior for the most part. So I'm not seeing any of that smoke back here. Let's pop open a vacuum line and make sure it's in the system and everything's fully charged with said smoke. And I have nothing. Okay, let's go check. That's getting real loud over there. Can't hear me. Nobody can hear anything. Okay, we're still smoking. Still smoking. Okay, so why do I not have smoke in my vacuum system? There's another port here at the fuel pressure regulator. Nothing out of that one either. So this line and this line running back through here. That runs up to, there should be a port on the intake manifold way back in there. Let's see if we can't see it. Give me a second. Let me get my light right. There's that port. Yeah, it's way in there a little bit, right on the side of the back of the throttle body. You see it, right? You guys can't see. I can't even see. There's nothing to see. There. Oh, yeah, there's our smoke. So we have smoke. See it right there, chooching out. We've got smoke flowing through. So it's making its way into this vacuum hose bundle right here. If I plug it back in to the intake, I should be seeing smoke coming out right here, but I'm not. Let's back probe it with smoke. I'll take it off the front of the engine and we'll plug it right into that port and see if it's leaking through maybe a break somewhere in that plastic line. So we'll shut that down. Yeah, we're smoking everywhere. We'll restart it. It's on like a little timer. So let me get myself untangled dangled here in gravity. We'll bring this in through the cab. Just plug it in right here. And we're just gonna see if we have a leak somewhere. Plugged it in. There we go. You guys can see. All right, so that's plugged in on the back side. So in theory, if we come over here and pull this plug back out, we should see a bunch of smoke pouring out of it, and we do. That's odd. How come it's not going the other way? Maybe I didn't give it enough time to plumb through. I may be chasing a dead end real quick right here. That's not okay. I'm gonna plug this in right to this vacuum line. We're gonna check all these vacuum lines for leaks. I don't think this is the problem, but it could be. All right, yeah, there we go. It just might not have had enough volume going. See that? Okay, so that port's free. That one's got smoke. This one, let's get all this stuff out of the way. Move you over there. Now we can see. How about that? Yep, there's some smoke. I don't think that guy right there is supposed to be bleeding through. That's the actuator for the EGR. It's a vacuum actuated EGR. That thing should be closed at all times when the engine's off. So what I'm doing is I'm looking to see if there's smoke passing through this EGR control valve when it's in the off position, and looks like not here, but over here at the main hose there is some smoke venting through. So this valve right here is not sealing. I don't think that's the fuel trim problem. I mean, it could be, but that may not be all of it. I don't think that's it. There's a PCV hose. That's in kind of rough shape. Let's, if I can get that PCV out of there, we'll check that too. Okay, I've got an idea to narrow this down real quick. So we disconnected this whole vacuum supply system. It's basically one big vacuum line that feeds three smaller vacuum lines. One goes to the HVAC system, the other one goes back here to the EGR, and then the other one goes over there to the fuel pressure regulator. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to block that off all the way, put a little cap over it. You guys couldn't see because it's dark. Put a cap on it. I'm going to run the engine, and I'm starting to experience some kind of technical difficulty with my filming equipment. It appears that the audio on this is broken up and in horrible condition. So I'm just going to voice over the next couple of scenes and we're going to get through it. A lot of what I just diagnosed is kind of a dead end. As you can see, I have disconnected all of the vacuum hoses from the port in the manifold and I blocked them off. I've restarted the engine and I'm taking a look at fuel trims, and we're not seeing any change in any kind of fuel trims. That means that the vacuum system that I'm currently taking a look at is not responsible for our trouble codes. Moving on, the next thing to take a look at is the purge solenoid for the EVAP system from the fuel tank. The line right here is the line that runs from the purge solenoid to the intake manifold. With the engine running, I'm going to disconnect this line and plug it with my finger to take a look at the fuel trim values. We can see here that with the purge solenoid vacuum source plugged off, we've isolated the rest of the fuel system, including the tank, from the intake manifold. And observing the fuel trim numbers on the scan tool, we see they're both hanging out around the -4, -5 zones. So we didn't get much change. The blurb you see at the end of the graph is me disconnecting the line at first, and it caused a super lean condition because I introduced a large vacuum leak. After having disconnected the vacuum system from the purge valve, I determined that that's probably not the cause, but I'm going to go a little bit further on the purge circuit just to make sure. Right now, I'm disconnecting the downstream line of the purge circuit. This is the line running straight back to the fuel tank. At this point, I'm just verifying correct operation of this particular purge valve. Yeah, we have no vacuum here. That's good. Even with this connected, there's no vacuum here. So this valve is a non-leaker. That's not our problem. Plug that back in. Put the clamp back on it. Okay. So, I'm wondering what that buzzy noise is. I hear something that doesn't sound right. It sounds like a rattle, almost like perhaps the PCV valve, which is that guy right there. It sounds like that might be rattling. Tell you what, let me shut her down. Take a look at these fuel trims real quick. We're chilling at 4, -4, -5, -6. Then right here, -7, -8. I wonder if that graph just changed. Oh, you know what? That graph change was me disconnecting this vacuum line. That's what that was. See that? Now we're creeping back up. Okay, that was me. Yeah, let's shut her down. Yeah, that doesn't sound right. I heard something that sounded like it continued to make that sound after shutdown. Let's get this PCV valve out of here. Yeah, see that guy right there on the valve cover. Let me dig that thing out. Let's see what we can see regarding this unit here. A little warm in there. Okay, that's disconnected, and that hose runs back right here and then back into the back of the manifold. Pop that guy out. So that's our positive crankcase ventilation system hose. Let me get this thing out of the vehicle so I can inspect it. I think this might have been that rattle noise, because they do have a check valve in here. You know that? So what I'll do, let's go ahead and plug up this vacuum port here for the PCV, then we will rerun it and see if that rattly noise goes away. Now we cannot run it with that giant vacuum leak, so I'll take a little cap. Compressor noise, everything's noisy. A few moments later, and there's less noise going on here, so let's fire this thing back up. See what our fuel trims do. So no vacuum leak. It's been sealed off. Pulling everybody back up. What do we get? I don't hear that buzzy noise anymore. That brrr. Yeah, that's gone. So we're on to something here. I think we may have figured this out. Could be a bad PCV valve. Hit list. So fuel trims. Yeah, they're going positive now. Pull up our graph. Short term, we're at 11 positive. Look at that. Okay, and all I've done here is disconnect the PCV and plug it off. So there's still an opening right there in the valve. Bear with me, I'm running out of failed audio clips here. It was running super positive on the fuel trims because I had left that vacuum line right there disconnected. Taking a look back at the fuel trims, and pardon the light in our face. There we go, move that out of the way. We can see both of those graphs at the bottom of the scan tool falling. So we're starting to stabilize near zero on our short-term fuel trims on bank 1 and bank 2. Now, going back over here to our data, reviewing these fuel trims one more time. Look at that, we're hovering real close to zero. This is what we're looking for here, switching between zero, positive, back to negative, back to positive. This is what we're looking for. This is exactly the fuel trim numbers that we want to see. I like that. Let's see what the O2 sensors are doing real quick. Let's see, sensor 1, bank 1, sensor 1 upstream, bank 1, sensor 2, that's also upstream. These guys are switching. And take a look at the voltage range that it's working at. 93 millivolts up to 868. This one here, 50 millivolts up to 822. That's really close. That's what we're looking to see. I'm noticing this little stepped up graph right here that we had seen prior. I don't particularly care for that area right there. This little piece of the graph here and this business over here, that's still an abnormal wavelength. We may have an O2 sensor issue on one of those sensors because it realistically should be looking like this, and even this has some odd little steps into it. I don't care for that either, but they're doing what they're supposed to be doing within reason. So taking the PCV, give that some shakes, and they are supposed to make that kind of noise, but that's a little excessive. Real quick, let's prove that this in fact was the noise. What I'm going to do, we're going to shut it down. I'm going to take my plug back out. We're going to plug this PCV hose assembly back in, and let's restart the van. Yep, that thing buzzing away. Buzzing away. Let's let the graph pull back up. And with that PCV hooked up, we do have a fairly large vacuum leak going on here because it is sucking in ambient air. It's not sucking in crankcase air. Let's go back down to those trims. I'm going fast as I can, bear with me. Okay, so with that vacuum leak that we've induced by connecting this PCV without the end of it going into the valve cover, fuel trims are super positive. We're 2933, that's maxed out, right? We'll reach over and plug it up. That shuts up the noise, brings the idle down, and our fuel trims are about to fall like a rock. That light up there. Let me turn the light. We're gonna make it a little darker in here. There. Fuel trims are falling, and they should start to stabilize. So what I'm going to do next is order another one, plug it back in, and we're going to watch this thing stay hovering around zero. That's what we're going to do. We're putting a PCV hose in it. Let's get one ordered. Yeah, that's not supposed to do that. So now you may be asking yourself, and you may be asking me in the comment section, Ray, I thought that this van was suspected of having too much fuel going into it. In the ECM through the O2 sensors, we're seeing too much fuel, and it was starting to pull back fuel, which is why we're getting a lean code, or a rich code. I misspoke. So I have a theory behind that. You see, hydrocarbons, when they are combusted, they're going to use up all the oxygen in the exhaust stream, right? Oxygen sensors are saying, hey, there's too much of this in here, something's wrong. So if the codes are saying that the vehicle is running rich and it decides to pull away fuel to lean it out in order to get the right air-fuel ratio mixture, how could a vacuum leak from an overproductive or overactive PCV valve cause it to run rich when in fact that's sucking in extra air, which should in theory create a lean condition? Now, when we had this thing running with this PCV valve out of the valve cover, We did have a lean condition because it was sucking in ambient air and just pumping extra air into the intake manifold. So the thing had to give it more fuel. That's why we saw fuel trim skyrocket. The ECM had to give it more fuel to maintain that balance. The difference is what kind of air was this thing sucking in. See, this is connected to the valve cover. The valve cover is connected to the top of the cylinder head, obviously, which has communication with the crankcase, hence positive crankcase ventilation, right? PCV. So what it was doing is, as this thing is sucking in too much crankcase air, it was bringing with it some engine oil. There's oil inside of the crankcase being sloshed around. It forms a mist inside. That thing is sucking out that crankcase oil, and we can probably see a bunch of oil. I don't know if we got enough light in there to see it. I mean, it's pretty gnarly looking in there. It's black and grody. There is oil going through it. So this thing is sucking up aerated engine oil and combining that with the fuel as it's all mixed inside of the combustion chamber. So effectively, it's trying to act like a diesel. It's fueling itself off of oil. It's mixing that engine oil that it's sucking out of its own crankcase, mixing that with fuel, causing extra hydrocarbons to be escaping through the exhaust, and the O2 sensors are saying, hey, I'm running rich. Let's take away some actual fuel. And that's why our fuel trims were sitting there hovering into the negative. So I am of the opinion that the faulty PCV valve was causing engine oil burn, and it was causing those lean codes. Let's check the oil level, and let's check the oil change interval on this unit. I did the last oil change on this at 150,977 miles, so we're going to call that 151, right? We are at 155,300, so what, 4,000 miles on one oil change? In fact, I know it's burning oil because about 2 weeks ago this fan stopped by and we threw a couple quarts in it. It was about 1.5 quarts or so low. So let's give this a wipe down, figure out what the deal is. I bet you were low. Bet money on it. And the survey says, would you look at that, we're 2.5 quarts low. There's the minimum mark right there, and that's our oil level mark. So we're running low on oil because the engine is sucking its own oil out of its own crankcase and burning it up. The ECM saw it and said, hey man, I'm running rich, we're gonna pull some fuel back. And when it pulled the fuel back, that's when we get our codes from the O2 sensors. So we do not need O2 sensors. We probably don't need to re-ring this engine. We might just need to put a PCV valve in it. So again, I'm gonna throw a new valve in it, and we're gonna fill this thing back up full of oil. I'm gonna give it back. We're gonna put it back into service. It's going back out on the ROAD, and we will check all of our fuel trims and whatnot with a replacement PCV hose assembly. And the non-audio video clips continue. I have a replacement PCV hose that is form fit for this vehicle. I didn't get just a replacement valve because this current valve is integrated into the hose. This is actually the Ford part that goes into it. Technically, this is the Dorman part that goes into it. The Ford part is discontinued years ago, but it's Dorman for the win on the hard to find replacement parts for the older cars. Anyway, I'm sneaking this replacement PCV unit into place right here, and we're going to get this thing plugged in and then recheck the scan tool to see if everything is running and operating stably and operating as designed. Okay, so with the PCV hose assembly in place, reconnected to the intake manifold and the valve cover, I have restarted the engine, and we're going to take a look at the current situation on the fuel trims. Now, everything on the engine has been reinstalled and is back in operating condition. All the vacuum lines are back on. The plugs have been removed. Everything is humming along just fine. And if we take a look at those fuel trims, we're going to see they are hovering right near zero. But more importantly, we can see that they're not near the threshold line of plus or minus 10 on the scale. We saw like a 4 and a 3, a positive 2 and a positive 1. So I'm pretty sure we got a home run on this one. That is a diag. The only thing left unknown is this PCV valve going to solve the oil consumption problem that this truck has a history with? So I'm going to go ahead and top the oil back off. I want to use 520 because that's the last grade of oil that I used, but I do not want to use a full syn 520 because we do have an oil burner issue. So I'm going to throw in some synthetic blend. That way, if it's burning some of the oil, we're not burning away higher quality oil. We've got a better mid-grade oil that we can use. And for the record, the AMSOIL synthetic blend oil has been tested by several YouTube channels and by some laboratories. And they found out that the 520 synthetic blend is actually outperforming some other manufacturers, quote, full synthetics, unquote. Fun fact of the day for AMSOIL. So we're going to do a little bit of old school pouring things right here. I'm going to spill a little bit on the end of the fill nozzle, and that's going to conclude the oil top off. We're putting in right about 2 quarts, and I believe we're 2 quarts low. One more fun observation. After I filled the crankcase, I should say that I left the engine running when I refilled the oil. We go back into the cabin here and we take a look at those fuel trims, and we can see there's a spike in the fuel trim values because the engine was running with the oil cap removed. So basically, I had created another external vacuum leak while I was refilling. So when I had that cap off, it was sucking in air through the PCV system, which was pulling air through the oil fill cap rather than trying to siphon it out of the crankcase itself. As you saw from the graph, by the time we walked back around into the cabin with the oil cap on and the engine running, the fuel trims had already started stabilizing back towards the 0 threshold mark again. Now, just to verify that all these measurements and readings weren't just a fluke, I sat and let this engine run for about 5, 10, 15 minutes, and going back to review the fuel trims one more time, we can see that they are stable, hovering near 0, and it looks like short terms on bank 1 are even touching the positive on occasion, which is exactly where we want. As I stated earlier, the threshold is plus or minus 10, so if we're hanging out fluctuating past 0, that in my estimation is right on the money. And if we go take a look, I scrolled up some to the O2 sensors, we can see that the waveforms have improved dramatically. They're not as clean as I'd like to see them, but again, overall, we've experienced a massive improvement in the numbers and the data at this current point in time. So I'm going to let this thing ride with just a PC valve and an engine oil top off. We're going to recheck it in a couple weeks to make sure it is not burning any more oil. If it is burning oil, then we may have another issue going on, but I believe that we pretty much hit the nail on the head with this one. And I inadvertently solved a problem that may have required a piston re-ring that could have been performed by mistake because something as small as a PCV valve was overlooked. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and recheck the overall engine oil level after adding those couple of quarts, and it looks like the thing is right on the money. Looking a little closer here, we can see that oil level is right at the top of the crosshatch, and we're going to leave it right there where it sits. It's not all the way up at the dot, and it's not the super full mark yet, giving us a little bit of space for some heat expansion. But I think we're good to go, like I said. So that being said, since I have no audio and I have no more content to share with you guys, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out right now. I will do such things as always by thanking each and every one of you guys for watching this video. As always, I'd like to ask you to let me know what you think about this diag and this truck in the comment section down below. Please do not forget to engage that like and or subscribe button while you're down there. And most importantly, have yourselves a fantastic day. See you guys later in a video, end of Ford, end of E350 PCV valve, end of oil burner, end of transmission.